Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Marvel has been juggernauting their way through cinema history for well over a decade at this point, releasing a series of movies that all intertwine themselves into one massive story to finally hit its climax 10 years in the making with the release of both Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. If Kevin Feige decided that he would step down after the film's release, I can't say that I would have blamed him. To leave his career on a high note. What better way to be remembered as the architect for what has become the Marvel Cinematic Universe? But where do you go after releasing the biggest box office movie ever made? Easy. You find yourself going downhill. Everything after Endgame has been nothing but misses for me, with the exception of Spider-Man No Way Home, but I give most of the credit on that movie to Sony. Although Sony has its own problems with the Spider-Man license, so credit where credit is due. The films have all been rather lackluster, because Marvel still has no idea who the big bad of the story is going to be, nor do they really know what to do with the characters that they have left over from the original saga. So instead of putting them in movies, why not throw them into TV shows for the newly established Disney Plus streaming service? That'll totally get people to watch their stuff, right?
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Marvel Studios begins their Disney Plus releases with WandaVision, a show that started off rather interestingly. Wanda was trying to grieve the loss of Vision by creating a fictional world where she wouldn't be forced to face real-world suffering. That's an interesting concept. But instead, we learn that Wanda enslaves an entire town as her puppets to play make-pretend because Vision had died. Don't worry, if you wanted more of that story, it's continued in Scarlet Witch and the Multiverse of Madness featuring Doctor Strange. Next, we get Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a show where we finally get a story arc for Bucky Barnes, only for it to be overshadowed by Sam Wilson becoming Captain America.
You've got to do better, Senator. You've got to step up.
After that is Loki, a show that introduces a character that we are led to believe is Kang, to find out that this newly revealed character was the architect of everything that has been happening so far in the MCU. Okay, sure. What If was a show that happened. Hawkeye would have been cool if it wasn't for the fact that he played second fiddle to his own show to Kate Bishop. Which leads me to Moon Knight. It's the first of the D+ shows to have a new hero as the main protagonist, and the one that I believed had the most potential to do something different than the rest of the MCU shows. Oh, how naive I was, slightly younger version of me. Moon Knight is the main protagonist in name only because, like every other Marvel endeavor after Endgame, that position is taken over by a character no one cares about. In this case, by Layla. I figured we were going to get an actual superhero show about Marvel's answer to Batman going about his day beating up baddies. Instead, we get 6 episodes of Stephen Grant being a coward while his wife Layla steps in to save the day. Wow, how original. The introduction of Layla is sloppily written. We get our first bit of her through a cell phone call between her and Stephen. Comes to find out that she is Mark Spector's wife. Mark Spector being the real Moon Knight. She says that she hasn't heard from him in ages. She claims that she was worried about him. If that's true, then what's the deal with Layla serving Stephen/Mark with divorce papers? She then goes about becoming the star of the show. We get far more Layla than we do Mark as Moon Knight. In 6 episodes, we get about 15 to 20 minutes of Moon Knight. What is it with Marvel giving the audience scene after scene after scene of just people talking instead of action sequences and superheroes? I often hear that Marvel has a villain problem. While that is certainly true, that is a topic for a different time. What Marvel also suffers from is a hero problem. Moon Knight isn't the first to fall victim of this, but it certainly proves that point most obviously. A superhero is supposed to have a purpose. A cool costume and awesome superpowers certainly helps. But what makes a person a hero isn't just the superficial things. It's the sacrifices they make and the causes they fight for. The only real battle happening with Mark is Steven. Arthur Harrow isn't really a villain so much as he's just a conduit of Amit. You could say the same about Mark just being a conduit of Khonshu, and I'd agree with you. But that's precisely my point. There really isn't any difference between the two, Nor does the show give us any reason as to why we should think that what Harrow is doing is any worse than what Khonshu has Mark doing, besides the show telling us that Harrow is supposed to be the bad guy. Moon Knight is the final straw for me as far as the Marvel shows. The show leaves the viewer with far too many questions than answers. Why does Steven forget that he has tied himself to the bed every morning when he wakes up? Why does Taweret, the hippo goddess of women and children, captain the ship in the underworld? How does Layla become the avatar of Taweret, give her the powers of the Scarlet Scarab? Why do Khonshu and Mark find it necessary to spin back the sky to find a particular constellation when they could just look it up online? It leaves a hardcore comic nerd like myself feeling unsatisfied and rather disappointed. I'm unsatisfied because there were things I wish they had done differently. I wish we got far more Moon Knight. I wish Jake Lockley was properly used instead of being just slapped on as a post-credits scene. I wish we actually got to see the climactic battle of Moon Knight and Arthur Harrow instead of Mark blacking out and we miss out on the whole fight. I wish Layla wasn't in it at all and we got Frenchie instead. But I am disappointed too, because Moon Knight made me realize, and it's a feeling I've had for quite some time at this point, that the shows and films that they are producing are no longer for comic fans like me. It is now being made for a casual audience. Unfortunately, they are offering that casual audience horrible writing, poor CGI, unlikable characters, and a feeling of wanting more, not because they are looking for more good stuff, but because they are left empty with the stuff they did get. Overall, Moon Knight is what Marvel intended it to be. More content. And that is what's going to be the downfall of Marvel. Marvel is pumping these things out so quickly that there is no heart in any of it. Don't get me wrong. There are bits and pieces of Moon Knight that I did enjoy. I think Oscar Isaac did a great job as Steven and Mark, given the crappy scripts he was given. I think the Moon Knight costume looked great the whole 10 seconds we got to see of it. I think some of the blacking out sequences were neat in the first episode. But everything besides that falls flat. Is anyone going to rewatch Moon Knight? Or any Marvel product in Phase 4? I doubt it. So where do you go from here? If you are looking for a better idea of who Moon Knight is, I would start with the Marvel Epic Collection, Moon Knight, Volume 1, Bad Moon Rising. You will get far more Moon Knight in this collection of comics than you will the show. If you're looking for a movie to scratch your Moon Knight itch, I'd suggest The Mask. A down-on-his-luck banker finds a mask that was created by a god that turns him into a sort of hero. The mask turns Stanley Ipkiss into an amplified version of himself that turns the dial up on his wants and desires. So those are just some of my ramblings on Moon Knight. What do you want me to talk about next? Leave your suggestions down in the comments. Who knows, maybe your suggestion will be the topic for a future video. Until next time, I'm just a nerd at heart.